Hello and welcome back to our final video in the series on appetite mastery. My name is Deanna Bedoya and it's been a minute since I've done one of these videos, but I really wanted to finish up this series because it is so important to understand how your appetite works and what kind of things influence it so you can figure out what's going to be kind of the best pathway for you to feel really empowered about your food-related behaviors. Ideally, so you just have like an excellent relationship with your body and with eating in a way that eating is still fun and enjoyable and like a positive part of your life. Right? One of the main messages that we've been getting across in this series is that a lot of us don't really understand what kind of drives us to eat, but really the central message is coming from this area of our brain called the hypothalamus, which is constantly receiving signals from all over the body, but also from the external environment, kind of through the ways that we understand, that we sense and perceive the external environment. So part of really mastering our appetite is all about mastering the signals that are coming in, that are influencing our drive to eat. Ideally, again, so we can develop this excellent relationship with food. Okay, so in these video series, I've gone over some of those signals, and really this slide speaks to how we actually manage those signals by one, kind of working on our thoughts, figuring out kind of what's going on in our head and trying to manage some of the thoughts that can promote appetite. Ideally, trying to find more emotional peace because our emotions, how we're feeling from day to day, from moment to moment, that can definitely drive our desire to eat. Something we often maybe forget about is that the foods we eat and how we eat and how we kind of influence the signals that our digestive tract sends our brain. This is really key to managing appetite as well, because if those signals are out of whack, then that's going to really put the accelerator down in our desire to eat. Okay. In our last video, we talked about how much your environment, the kind of stimuli you see all around you, some of which you can control and some of which you can't, how that has a powerful influence on our eating behavior and how we can manage that as well. But today's video, I really want to focus on other people. And one of the main things or big things that kind of makes us eat perhaps more than we want to or in a way that we don't want to is the people around us. And kind of a good question to start this conversation out with is, how do the people around you affect your eating? And honestly, if I were you, I would just pause this video and take a few seconds to journal about that. Just let it flow of all the ways you think the people around you affect your eating, right? And maybe there's some people in particular that have a profound effect on your eating behaviors. And when I say that, there's actually a number of different ways that other people can influence our eating. And I've kind of highlighted three main ones, but maybe you've identified other ways that people affect your eating behavior. So one big area is that other people can affect how we feel. And like we said before, one of the things that affects our desire to eat is kind of where our emotions are, how we're feeling from day to day. We often use food as a coping mechanism. And if we don't feel really great in a particular moment, we might use food to make us feel better. So are there people around you that are making you feel in a certain way that makes you want to eat more? Right? So I remember personally, when I was really struggling with my food behaviors, there's people that they would say things, and maybe they didn't even mean to be cruel, but they would say things in a way that really triggered me, right? Maybe they would talk about their own bodies, or maybe they would make comments about my body, or about me as a person, or just even things in passing that would just really make me feel shitty. And sometimes when you feel shitty, like I said, you go and you seek out food as a coping mechanism because food is fun to eat and it's naturally soothing, right? So it makes sense that we seek that out. So I really want you to be aware of how people are making you feel and how that's maybe affecting your eating behavior. So for instance, if you hang out with someone and then when you leave, or even when you're with them, you're like, oh my God, I need to eat something more than normal. That's perhaps a sign that that person is making you feel in a way that's driving your desire to eat. Another factor that can influence our desire to eat that's due to other people, and this is really vast, but these are various verbal cues, right? So even sometimes when people are like talking about dieting a lot, or when people are talking about eating a lot, or people talking about their bodies a lot, or whatever else, and it's going to be really individual to you, there might be certain verbal cues, right, that make you like, you hear that and then you have like a reaction in your brain. It's like a 1-2 punch. I hear this and I want to eat, right? So one of the most powerful tools you're going to have for behavior change is self-awareness. So if there are certain verbal cues that just like immediately want to make you want to seek out food, be aware of those. I'm going to give you some strategies of how to manage those, but I just want you to be aware of what's triggering your desire to eat. And quite honestly, and these kind of all might work together, just seeing other people eating can influence our desire to eat, or seeing the way other people eat can affect the way we eat. So an example I use in my class sometimes is maybe like you go for dinner with your friends and you're like, oh, I really want a salad. I'm going to have a salad today. There's a delicious salad on the menu. And then you're like, sweet. So you have your order ready. And then the server comes along and everyone at your table's like, okay, I'm going to have a burger. 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 You might, and there's nothing wrong with choosing a burger per se, but you might change your choice based on what other people are doing or what other people are eating. And it's funny because some of us are more like this than others. Some of us are like fully independent and we make all our choices ourselves. I'm not necessarily like that. I'm very influenced by other people. So again, it's just becoming aware of how other people are potentially influencing your eating choices. Okay? So the question then is, if other people are influencing your food choices, how do you revamp that? How do you rework that? How do you take the power back? How do you make sure that your food decisions are your own and they're not being influenced by other people, right? And of course, you know, we're naturally social creatures and it's fun to eat socially, and we're all going to be influenced by social settings a little bit. But hopefully we get to a point where we don't feel that it's in other people's hands as opposed to our own, where we still feel like we have sovereignty over our food decisions, where we feel empowered to make food decisions that are in line with our own values and goals and aren't just about what other people are doing or how they're influencing us, right? So this again might be a journaling question. How can you make sure your food choices are your own decisions? Okay. And something that I want to add to this conversation before I move on is, maybe you've identified certain people, or maybe you've identified like certain ways people make you feel that like you wish were different. It is my personal belief that if you want other people to change, they're not going to. You can ask them to, and you can, tell them how you feel, and ideally hope to kind of work towards a place where you feel really good and they're maybe not influencing you as much. Sure, that can happen. But I just think it's probably wisest to proceed forward in the belief that other people aren't going to change, because you're going to get super friggin' frustrated if you constantly are relying on other people to change. For instance, my wonderful husband, JP, lovely human being, but he likes to eat a lot at night, and so we've eaten dinner, maybe we've had dessert, and then later on at night, he goes to the fridge, and that's a huge influence on me. Right? Because I've definitely struggled with night eating in my past, and it's something that I feel it feels disempowering for me. So when I see him go to the fridge at night and getting food, it's like a trigger for me, and it makes me want to eat more. But I can't expect him to change. I can ask him to, or I can ask him not to maybe eat in front of me. Sure. But at the end of the day, like, I'm going to get very frustrated, and I'm going to take the power out of my own hands and put it in his hands in order to change my behavior, right? And that to me is very disempowering. So really in those situations, I have to kind of come back to my own power and realign with my own values and goals. And again, not expect him to change, love him for wherever he's at and whatever he's doing, but figure out a way to change myself. And sometimes when you change yourself, other people change along with you. But the message I want to get across there is that you can't expect other people to change. You're going to have to be the change. Annoyingly, unfortunately, but it's mostly true. Okay, so again, one place you might want to start with this conversation is just to make perhaps a list of all the people in your life that maybe have some sort of influence on your food decision, and maybe even rate from like 1 to 10. Like 10 is they make me eat a lot, 1 is maybe they make me eat less, right? Depending on what your goals specifically are. Right? And just like without judgment of these people, with a lot of self-compassion and compassion for them as well, an important first step is to just be aware. How are you going to be empowered if you're not aware of what you need to be empowered about? Right? So who are these people that are influencing your food decision, and how are they influencing your food decision? A really good place to start this conversation. And then once you've identified that, here are some other tips that could potentially help you to make sure that others don't influence your food decisions in a way that you don't want. So a question that came up before that's worth revisiting is figuring out how other people affect, compromise perhaps, your emotional state. How are you feeling? If you're using food to cope with kind of your feelings, which is perfectly normal, no judgment. Of course you do, because food makes you feel good, right? But if you want to stop that, right, you really have to maybe start with identifying how people are compromising your emotional states and whether you want to give them that power over you. And that's easier said than done. Right? If we've always been in a particular dynamic with someone, sometimes it does feel like they have more power over us. But just because something's been a certain way for forever doesn't mean that it needs to continue being that way, right? What is their shit versus what is your own, right? When are they maybe affecting your emotional state? Maybe because of their own projection, maybe because of what's going on in their own life, maybe because of what they're trying to control. And that's really their stuff. That's not your stuff. You don't have to wear everyone else's baggage. I love a piece of advice I got from a mentor once is like, because I can wear other people. I can wear their baggage. I can wear their feelings a lot, and they become like my feelings. They're like, when you feel that way, come back home or go into a different room or kind of change the setting a bit and feel like you're like taking off a coat. Feel like you're taking off their baggage, right? Because it's not yours. You don't have to wear everything. The amount of weight you hold of someone else's doesn't necessarily show how much you care for them. There's other ways of showing how much you care for them. You don't have to feel everything that's not your own. That's exhausting. And so many of us do it, right? So what's yours versus what's theirs, okay? And also it's important if there's like certain situations where you know you're going to be influenced to eat more than you want to, it's important to try to make a plan before that situation starts. So for instance, I used to play poker with a bunch of friends, and it was like an eat-a-thon. Like I would eat dinner, I'd be full, and then I would go to this and like chips and pop and pizza and like all the kind of food that, you know, that drives mental hunger, right? And I had to get to a point where I really prepared for those situations because I knew that they would drive me to eat. So one thing, for instance, I did is like I'd started to eat more protein-rich foods before I would go there so I would feel more full. I would kind of realign with my values and what was important to me. So when I was pressured to eat, I could kind of reconnect with my values and my goals as opposed to being influenced by other people. right? I also found ways to kind of distract myself as well, so I wasn't as influenced by what other people are eating. And again, trying not to wear other people and other people's experiences, right? Sometimes not being influenced by other people requires verbal responses. So if someone is pressuring you to eat, there's always that person. And sometimes if you're like trying to make good decisions, some people know and they try to sabotage you a little bit, bless their hearts. They do not know what they do. You know, some people are just, consciously or not, they're saboteurs. So if there's someone that is knowingly being a saboteur or unknowingly being that way, but pressuring you to eat or pressuring you to do anything that you don't want to do, it's really important that we get to a place where we feel very empowered to say no. A lot of us are people pleasers and we're not really good at saying no, but practice saying these words without feeling bad, right? There's a big difference between saying, oh, no, thank you, and no, it's okay, I don't want any, right? Maybe I didn't act that well enough, but do you know what I'm saying? Like there's a big difference between like an empowered, no, thank you, and no, right? But it's just like, you're saying no, but you're almost like you feel bad about saying no. Right? So no, thank you, right? I appreciate the offer, but I'm not hungry, right? Sometimes like a no, people don't hear no, right? And sometimes you just have to say no over and over again. I've said that before. People don't like it. I get it. And actually that often means that you have to like get back to that place of feeling empowered, knowing what you want, focusing on your goals and values, and prioritizing your own needs, instead of always trying to be a people pleaser. Being a people pleaser often leads to resentment because you spend your life pleasing others and maybe you expect them to do that back to you, but they often don't. And how do you feel afterwards if you're giving, and no one's giving back, right? You're often going to feel resentful. So it's important that we with love, and this isn't about hurting anyone else or making anyone else feel bad, right? But how do we love each other, love other people, while still feeling empowered, while still being able to say no, while still aligning with our own goals and values and prioritizing our own needs, right? Sometimes we need to confront these people-pleasing sides of us. I don't want to get too gendery on this, but I'll just say it. I find that women more so than men, often, we're told from a young age that we need to constantly please others and we have to be a good girl and we have to do everything right and we can't be mean, and to our own detriment a lot of the times, right? We're constantly pleasing others at the expense of ourselves. And that can't go on forever, right? That's, I think of, there was these deathbed regrets that, this palliative nurse wrote what people most commonly expressed on their deathbed. And one of the most common ones was, I wish I had the courage to live a life that was true to myself instead of a life other people expected of me. So many of us live our lives for other people, to please other people. But that's not a place of empowerment. And that's not always a place of true love as well. We can love others while also loving ourselves. So we need to sometimes confront our people-pleasing side and maybe address where that's coming from, right? That's something I'm still working on myself, but it might be an important part of trying to manage how other people affect you, not just your eating behaviors, but all sorts of other behaviors, and make you do things perhaps that you don't want to do. Okay, and that kind of speaks to this next point, which is about setting firm boundaries. And I know boundaries are a hot topic these days. It's easier said than done, but when we say boundaries, what are your lines? If you go to a party and you don't want to eat something and people are forcing food on you, how can you say no without being a jerk? It's not about being a jerk, but saying no in a way where you're not trying to offend them, but you're also doing what's in your best interest. Because when we take care of ourselves well and we feel empowered, we also model that behavior for other people and help other people feel empowered as well. Starting to set boundaries is quite difficult, especially if you've been a people pleaser your whole life. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll become with it, and the more easier it'll be for you. Okay, so practice small, perhaps, like saying no, right? No, thank you. I'm okay, thank you, right? Or I don't want to do that, but I appreciate the offer, right? Start with something small and start with like an easy boundary, and they get easier the more you do them. And then it feels really good. Then it feels really good to be like, nope, I don't think so. And you don't want to be a jerk about it either, but it's really empowering to say no. And that's one of the things that like helps you start to make decisions more that are in line with your own values instead of what other people expect for you. Okay, so like anything, we need to be compassionate and patient with ourselves as we try to change any behavior, right? I talk about appetite mastery, but really this is about like feeling more empowered, right? We're using appetite as a proxy for personal empowerment, right? Because when you feel empowered about your food decisions or any decision, that translates to other parts of your life as well. So if this has always been difficult for you, I understand. And it might always be something that you perhaps have to work on a little bit harder than other people, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you about that. Know that things take time, and that even if they've been a certain way forever, you can change them. Bit by bit, day by day, you can change these things. Right? So that is what this appetite mastery system is about. Today we were talking about revamping our relationship, but really it's about figuring out what's really driving your desire to perhaps eat more than you'd like to, and then figuring out how to be more empowered to make your own decisions, right? And to feel more in control of your eating behavior, right? Because, my dear, my love, you deserve to feel great in your body. And you are going to shine so much more as a human being when you feel empowered in your body, when you feel empowered about your decisions, right? You deserve to feel that way. And we all want the version of you that feels that way and shows up that way. You deserve it, and I'm here to see it. My name is Deanna Bedoya, and I will see you next time.